If Joan from Telltale Games' The Walking Dead Season 3 had chosen to raid other raiders instead of just individual settlements, would that be a little more ethical? Welcome back to Lost in Games Unscripted, the series where I talk about pretty much whatever comes to mind at any given time. And in this instance, that happens to be Joan and Season 3 of Telltale Games' The Walking Dead. Yeah, the least popular season, the one that nobody really likes to talk about, but we're talking about it today. So I had a comment on one of my recent videos, was where I was talking about should raiders in post-apocalyptic settings be forgiven. The comment was from, I don't want to say this name wrong. I feel like I'm going to butcher it, but I'll put it up on the screen here. Basically, what they were asking was maybe to raid other less ethical raiders. Maybe that would be a thing that you should do or focus on. Would that be more ethical? And I loved that comment because basically that leads down the path of thinking something that's called the slippery slope fallacy. And in this instance, it's not really a fallacy, but I'll explain the slippery slope first. The slippery slope fallacy is essentially where you start to kind of extrapolate what could potentially happen, going to the most wild conclusion possible. So you say something like, if this one little thing, if we allow this one little thing, is this going to lead to these other crazier things down the road? And sometimes that is illogical. It doesn't make any sense. It's like these two things aren't connected. They don't make any sense. But in a situation when it comes to a post-apocalyptic society, like where Joan and the community there in Richmond had going, you start to think, well, what if they had started? What if Joan had proposed to them when they first were trying to get settled in? They were trying to get through the winter. What if she had said, hey, there's this other settlement out there that we know, maybe she had heard it from a scout or something like that. They go out and they raid other people and they pillage and they steal things and they kill other people. Maybe we should go take things from them. And we'll kill them off. That'll be a net good for the world. No more, get rid of a group of raiders. And we get a bunch of stuff to help us maybe make it through the winter. And if the council had agreed to that and they had said, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Let's do that because that way it's a double win, right? We're getting rid of raiders and we're getting goods. But something like that very easily can escalate from just taking things from known raiders to taking things from, well, I heard this group was raiding people. One of the scouts said they were raiding people. We'll go ahead and take things from them too. Or, hey, this group's getting kind of desperate over here. They're struggling. They're having some troubles. They are very close to turning to, I've heard some chatter that, they might be turning into raiders. Maybe we should just go ahead and take them out to prevent them from turning into raiders. And it very easily escalates. And we see this in the real world as well. We see it in a sense of where the world used to be. We go back to World War II, for instance, right? World War II was one of those situations where you had a country that was kind of actually starting to try to take over the world, and everybody else was reacting to that. After that, once we get into the Cold War, it became more preventative measures. Well, we have to prevent this group from spreading. We have to prevent this this country from getting weapons and that kind of thing. It was one of those deals where it went from defensive and protecting ourselves to we need to go on the offensive just in case. And as we've seen that in the real world, we would see that as well in a situation like Richmond or in a post-apocalyptic situation. If you're ever in that, not that we would necessarily be in a post-apocalyptic world, but if you were ever in a situation where you were in a group and that group said, hey, what if we start doing this? What if we start taking out these other groups, these other raiders, because, we're going to help people out and we can get their supplies and everything will be fine. That's when you need to go, whoa. Let's stop this. All right. It's one thing if that group of raiders has already attacked us and we are retaliating, we are defending ourselves. It's another thing to be preemptive about it. Because in a situation where you are saying we're going to raid other raiders, it's only a matter of time before you take that leap. It's just human psychology. Because it's easy we've talked about making good people do bad things in the past with talking about Fallout, Fallout 4 specifically, and the Institute and the situation there. It's easy to get people to do bad things by just making them feel threatened, by making them feel like, hey, this group maybe right now isn't a threat to us, but down the road, it could kind of be a threat to us. They're training their kids to fight, and so we've got to do something about that. We got to stop that from happening. It's something that is explored, and if you look at the Walking Dead show, is a perfect example. When it comes to the saviors, and somebody else had brought this up at one point in a comment, the saviors, Rick's group attacks the satellite outpost, right? And it turns out that was only part of the saviors. But their whole thing is we're going to be defensive because we're protecting all of these settlements that the saviors have been, they've come to the hilltop, they've come to the kingdom, they've been attacking the Alexandria, that kind of thing. So we're going to take them out before they get to us. In reality, we know that wasn't the case. But what if somebody had said, what if somebody had said that satellite outpost was a threat when it wasn't a threat, when they weren't saviors there because they wanted to take them out? And what if you had told all of the people, what if Rick and the group had said, hey, this satellite outposts that we're going to go attack, these are all bad guys. We need to take them out. And they had decided to go and take them out because maybe Rick didn't like the look of one of them. Maybe Daryl ran into one of them and the guy scuffed up his boots or something, and he decided, we're going to take you guys out. Where does it end? Where you can only push it so far, but it is a slippery slope. In reality, the right situation for Richmond would have been to have Joan say, we're not going to raid settlements, but we're going to offer them a home. We're going to go to them and we're going to say, hey, we've got a whole place built up here. We've got walls, we've got all this. We want to bring you in, bring all of your supplies in, and we can all work together. Or set up a trading situation. We're going to trade with you. We're going to say, hey, you've got stuff, we've got stuff. We can trade back and forth. Maybe we can focus on one thing, you can focus on another, at least in the short term, because if you can focus your resources on one particular thing, for instance, now this could become a protection racket, but a situation where Richmond says, we have a lot of weapons, we have a lot of experienced personnel, military personnel. We can provide some people to help you guys out to keep you safe so you don't have to focus on that and you can focus on growing food. Maybe that could be a thing. The problem with that is it kind of runs it, like I said, into a protection racket a little. But if you're careful with it, trading goods, trading services, that's not really out of the realm of what we do today in the modern world. There are companies that hire security agencies all the time because they need security for their site and they don't want to invest in their own security. So they hire somebody to come in and do it for them so they can focus on their one thing they're good at. And that works in a post-apocalyptic world as well. But I want to know your thoughts. I want to make sure I didn't forget anything here. Oh, talking about why Joan's system can't be morally justified. We could talk about that too, because when it comes to moral justifications in these systems, it's really kind of interesting. You've got a couple of different systems that I focus on typically are deontology and utilitarianism. And Joan's way of doing things, whether it is raiding the raiders or just raiding settlements, there is no moral justification for that. Because if you look at it from deontology, it's very clear that no killing, no harming, no hurting anybody else, that kind of thing is where deontology typically falls. You have a very more black and white moral system. Even utilitarianism, though, doesn't really fit well when it comes to Joan's idea of, well, we're just going to raid them so we can make it through the winter. You're getting their goods, but you're doing more harm than good. Ultimately, those people, that community that you just raided, that you just killed all their people and took all of their stuff, they could have been an overall net positive for the community. And in reality, the more communities that you have that are working together, the safer you all are, even if you're separate communities, even little towns that are separate from each other. If you're working together, if you're trading together, sharing news, sharing resources, if one community has some trouble one year, another community could jump in and help them out. So by taking all of their supplies, even from a utilitarian perspective, where the idea is that you're trying to do the thing that's going to be the most good for the most people, even that doesn't work in a utilitarian perspective, because you're not helping everybody, you're not improving the world overall. You're making things worse for everybody in the long run because you're weaker to have fewer groups. And when those groups are afraid, when new groups that pop up hear about, hey, maybe you got survivors from one of the groups that wound up getting away, and they're like, hey, we gotta be careful. We don't want to. We know what's going to happen if we cross this. We want to make sure to stay away from them. We aren't going to work with them at all. Even if they need desperate help, we're not going to come to their aid, right? So you're causing more problems for yourself in the long run. So there's no moral justification for Joan's way of doing things, and it is a slippery slope from what she is suggesting. Even if she started off suggesting we will only attack raiders, it's a slippery slope that's easy to fall down to. Well, we just need to do this stuff to get through. We can use the resources better than they can. Or they might be a threat down the road. We never know if they're going to turn on us. Sure, they're friendly today, but maybe tomorrow they're going to be enemies. So not only is there no moral justification, but you also can easily wind up doing some pretty awful things following down that stretch. But I want to know what you all think in the comments below. And I want to hear your suggestions for other topics, because, like I said, this one was inspired by a comment on a prior video. And when I get those kind of comments, I love talking about that kind of stuff and driving the conversation forward, because ultimately I want these videos to be conversation starters. I won't always share complete thoughts, because I want them to be something where we can discuss things and go back and forth, and whether it's in the comments or a follow-up video, whatever that happens to be. So leave your comments down below. If you want to help the channel out, you can subscribe. You can hit the like button down below if you enjoyed the video. You can join as a channel member or Patreon over on Patreon. I've got those things set up as well. So all of that goes a long way towards helping me to achieve my goals in the long run, and have keep making these kind of videos and the philosophy and ethics series. So that's all I've got for this one. I want to thank you all for watching. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.